threats of millions. Forces trying to corrupt that feeling. Piece of the pie, that's what they dealing. To sell your soul, you commit the treason. Gotta make ends, is that the reason? My innocence is what you're stealing.
My innocence.
Hey everybody, welcome to From Now On.
Yeah.
I'm Rich G, and this
Brian Hardgroove here.
What's up, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Good.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad we got that really good interview with
Valerio
in the can. We'll put that up in a couple of days. This show is primarily for us to introduce ourselves to our audiences. You know, people who your friends that don't know me, my friends that don't know you.
Yeah.
And just let them know how we met and how we the project we met over, and then we can get into the details of that one, in another 10 or 15 minute show.
Fantastic.
So you want to start?
Yeah, why not? I would say sometime around the late 90s, a fellow named Jack Douglas came to me and asked me to participate in a project. Now, I had called Mob Story, a hip opera. I knew Jack for a number of years because he was the producer of the Aerosmith albums, and I, of course, was the tour manager for Aerosmith for quite a while there. And we were, fast friends. And sometime in the late 90s, there was the Sopranos, and it seemed like the mafia was being talked about. A number of organized crime figures were in the news at the time, and you had the government institute something called the RICO statute, so they were really putting a lot of pressure on the mob. And right then and there, Jack the goofball thought it was a good idea to make a play about the mob. And obviously hip hop and rap was popular, so why not call it Mob Story, a hip opera?
Right.
That's basically how it started.
Okay. So how I got involved in it was through Jack.
Yeah.
Jack was in the studio I worked in called Manhattan Center Studios on 34th and 8th in Manhattan.
Yep.
And I've been there for quite a few years. And he, in 95, he was in our A studio doing the Supertramp album that came out that year. And I didn't know Jack, but apparently during that session, he queried out aloud about needing someone who would do a dance mix for a French release of the first single, and a couple of engineers and one engineer and one assistant that worked for the studio. They both claimed to have brought my name up to Jack. So I don't know who really brought my name up.
Real typical.
But the word came up to me because I was living in the building at the time too. There was living spaces around there,
Wow. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was part of the New Yorker Hotel.
Right.
And because both companies were owned by both businesses were owned by the same company.
Right.
So I was living in one of those rooms up there, and about half the hotel was empty at that time. It was like living in a abandoned 45 floor ghost town. It was really interesting.
Something out of The Shining.
Yeah.
Waiting for the little girl in the dress to run by
you. I tell you, if you walked around that building at that time with that in your mind, it would scare the hell out of you.
I bet. Because
the place was old. People died in that building. Famous people, at least one famous person died in that building.
Who?
The guy that Edison screwed over. Tesla.
Tesla?
Nikola Tesla died in that building.
Oh, my
God. Nikola Tesla. He died in that building. As a matter of fact, there's a plaque on the side of the building to him that what country was he from? I can't remember what country he was from, but some officials from the country where Tesla was from
really
came and had a ceremony and put a plaque on the side of the building. But anyway, I was living there, so the word came up to me that Jack Douglas was looking for somebody to do a dance mix for Supertramp, and and the guy said it to me, assuming I wouldn't know who Jack Douglas was, because I don't think he knew really who Jack was.
I don't think Jack knew who he was back then, but go ahead.
but knowing, reading credits like I always did as a kid, I knew who he was.
Right.
And so I come down to the studio and introduce. So I walk into the studio. I walk into the kitchen area first, and I waited for him to come out of the control, because they were in the middle of the sessions, and Rick Davies was there. I think Rick Davies was doing some piano parts or overseeing something, whatever.
Yeah.
And so Jack comes out, and he said, "Oh yeah, how you doing? You Brian Hardgroove?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I'm Jack Douglas." I said, "I know who you are." He
cool.
said, I said, "You are an historic figure." And he said, "Oh, you make me sound like Abe Lincoln." So from that moment, I always called him Mr. President.
Oh, that's great.
Always called him Mr. President.
That's great.
And if someone says I got to see Jack Douglas, and I said, well, just say, "Hey, Mr. President," and he'll say, "Oh, Hardgroove," because I'm the only person to call him that. But anyway.
That's awesome.
So I go in, and he's telling me about the Supertramp thing, and I'm okay, cool. And so I end up doing a dance mix with them, and then he hired me after that to work on Slash's first solo record.
Oh, the Snake Pit.
Snake Pit, yeah.
Yeah, Slash's. And pardon me, I think in case maybe somebody doesn't know, Jack Douglas did John Lennon's Double Fantasy album and a bunch of stuff with Yoko Ono and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and before that, he did all of the initial Aerosmith.
Right.
So, keep going.
So it's just a legend. And so then I worked on Slash's record. I just programmed a few things, rhythmic things for that record. And so some time passed, and then he contacted me about your project, you guys' project. Right. So I didn't know you at the time.
Right.
And I can't remember the first session that we went to. I do know I prepped a lot of the music at my studio in my house in Queens.
That's right.
And then I brought tracks into the session. And but yes, it's kind of a blur, but we could talk about some of those sessions a little bit later on.
Oh, in particular, exactly, yeah. But then obviously, that's how we met, is on that project because of Jack Douglas.
Yeah.
And that project, and we won't go into detail, but I mean, think about all the people we had on that. We had clearance from David Bowie to use changes in it. Okay?
I did that arrangement,
and that was a good job, man. That's a good.
Thanks.
That is a beautiful job. So we had that. Then you brought Chuck D in. We had Steven Tyler, Joe Perry. We had Slash on there. We had one of Aerosmith's old guitar players, Rick Dufay, on it. Yeah. And then we had Chris Burns from Black 47. He sang. He was an FBI agent. He sang that.
Yeah.
So but the bottom line is it was a lot of fun. It was almost like the movie The Producers, because we had so many people. I think I had. Randy Cutler was the attorney that had to get everybody's okay on everything, and he was kept real busy trying to get everybody to sign and get the permission to use Stephen and Joe and Slash. And the interesting thing is, the easiest guy to get was Bowie's permission to use changes. They did that right away. I mean, David was just a fantastic cat. He knew, he understood what we were trying to do. We were trying to basically make a hip hop play about the mob. And so he dug it. Vinny Pastore, we had Tony Sirico from The Sopranos. And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but you really didn't even kind of know what The Sopranos were, right?
I had never seen the show. This was 99 we were working on the record, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, 99.
When did The Sopranos air? When did that come? When did it start?
It was earlier than that. I think it was still on. I believe it was still. No, it might have been.
No, it was still on.
It was still on. No, okay, yeah. So it was still on. I don't remember when it started, quite frankly.
I remember all my friends saying how Sopranos their favorite show. Chuck famously said The Sopranos was his favorite show, but I had never seen it. And once we started working on the record,
Right.
I then got HBO because I didn't have HBO at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't have any cable going into the house because my daughter was very young. And I didn't want any of that, any cable stuff coming. We just got broadcast news and public television, Sesame Street and all that stuff. My wife and I, we didn't partake of, current entertainment at the time.
Right.
But I got HBO, so I knew something about these guys who were in the studio with us working. I didn't want to be completely ignorant.
But
so,
I mean, it was remember, it was the mob, and we had gangster rap at the time. So the mob, gangster rap, it made sense. Everybody was, everybody at that time wanted to be a mobster. As far as even in the game, in the old G and all of that, like the Tupacs and all of them, Biggie, all of them, they all kind of dug the mob. One guy's name was Gotti, right? Young Gotti,
Irv Gotti.
Irv Gotti,
yeah.
Right? So everybody wanted to be in the mob, right? And the funny thing about it was that Chuck nailed his song.
Yeah.
He did a song, Everybody Pays the Man with the Cigar.
Yeah.
That
was actually, of all the tunes we worked on, that was my favorite one because it felt very organic. And interestingly enough, the music for that I had done, I did the music for that in 98 or 97. It was at least a year prior to bringing it to that project. And I always wanted Chuck to perform it. And I had a good reason to ask him now because it was part of a project that had names that were equal to his,
Yeah.
But when he did that track, it felt so organic, and that was the one track that we worked on where we didn't work on it we were at Quad.
You brought it to us. You brought it to us.
I can't remember the place. I remember we did some work at Quad Studios.
Yeah, we were all over the place.
In Manhattan. Yeah, we did some work in Manhattan Center. But that one we did in Roosevelt at Chuck's studio.
Right, I was going to say, and you brought it to us, and I was like, wow.
But lyrically, he just killed it.
He did.
It's funny. It was it had the feeling of first person, third person simultaneously.
Right.
And then the end result is like, ooh, based on how it ended, where did he tell the story from?
Yeah.
What
the bottom of the ocean. The bottom of the ocean, man. Right.
It was really good. Instead of our usual closing theme, we'll close with that track.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Everybody pays the man.
Yeah, he could.
That's a good one, man.
So during those sessions, that's when we got. Oh, you know who else? Kamal, the Jerky.
Kamal from the Jerky Boys. Yeah, absolutely. He was one of the mobsters, and he was great with his voices. I mean, if we really look at it, we had some incredible people. Even the reporter. There's a reporter in Mob Story, and
was that Kate?
No, but the woman, was actually on News 4, NBC, the NBC station.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, it was nuts. Yeah, the people that we had. Bill Cates was good. He helped write a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It was a fun moment there. It really was. I mean, that went on. It took us between the legal, the thing that bogged us down was the legal, but it took us over a year because we started in '99, and the goal was to do this with an infomercial. So we were doing an infomercial. So there's actually somewhere floating around, and if you look hard enough on the internet, you can find it. There's an infomercial for this with just about everybody in it.
I saw stills for that. As a matter of fact, I came to where you guys were shooting it because I think Jack played like a bartender.
Jack played a bartender. And you did come. We hung out, you and I, because I wasn't in it. You weren't in it. That was a fun day, and we did it we did it down on Mulberry Street. And I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna remember the restaurant, but we did it at like a corner Italian restaurant that they let us film in, and it was a blast.
And somebody did a big mural on the wall, didn't they?
We had that was like a poster. It was like it was like one of those banners. It was like a big, but the banner was about 20 feet by 20 feet.
That's right. It was big. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I actually brought that back with me to New Rochelle at the time. I had an office there, and I put it on the side of the office
Yeah.
because it
so
was
so
so.
so through, so through all of that, that's where you and I met.
Yeah, and we
That's how
hung
that's
out.
how we met.
I mean, you like to
And
laugh, I like to laugh.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we had a ball. I mean, we
yeah.
really did. And you were very helpful because the bottom line is I'm an Italian from the Bronx, so I might have in my lifetime run into a couple of guys that appeared to be mobsters.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of their manners. And I knew what I wanted to do, but you were the musician and you were the
Hmm.
producer and you brought it out and you put it out there. You know what I'm saying? So we would talk. I remember talking to you and saying this and this, and then you
Yeah,
would whip it up like a chef,
yeah,
and voila.
yeah. We had there was I have 7 songs on it. Red Devil, what was his name?
Yeah, the Red Devil.
I can't
Yeah,
remember. He had probably the same amount of songs, and so each one of us produced our songs with Jack as
right,
the overall producer of the
right,
project.
right.
And
Yep.
yeah, but you and I are the only you're the only person besides Jack, 'cause I went into it as a friend with him. But you're the only one that I actually built a relationship with afterwards because
Yep.
it was built on something different, you know. And then shortly after that, I had a medical emergency in my family, and you were there
Yes.
for me.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, we were
and
friends. I'm
yeah,
honored.
so I realized, okay, this is this cat, he's a real dude, just a real great guy. So our friendship to me was solidified from that day on, and from that time on, it didn't matter how often we spoke to each other or not. So yeah, it was cool. That's how we met anyway.
And it still is. I mean, it still
Yeah,
is, and I feel blessed. I feel blessed to have you as a friend because we have had over the years some great conversations, and
yeah,
and a lot of
yeah.
times I would call you and say, "Are you seeing what's going on in the world right now? You know what and whatever that might have been,
Yeah,
especially when the ignorance of racism comes into play in this world. And I
yeah,
would call you and say, Brian, what's going on here?
yeah.
And I remember you telling me one time within the last 5 years that you said racism is cyclical,
Mm.
right? And I don't know if you were quoting somebody when you said it or because I
Well,
was.
anything that comes out of me that sounds remotely intelligent, I probably got it from somewhere else.
Well, you know me too, right? Most of the time I'm interpreting it anyway. Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's like me saying self-control is strength.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously I didn't make that up because I'm fighting self-control every second of the day. So something like that, or calmness is mastery, Brian.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we were initially going to make this a 15-minute show and just break it into 2 parts. Well, let's just keep going.
All right,
Let's
fine.
just keep going.
All good, and we'll figure it out. So I mean, from there, the other thing is if we're really trying to get people to know us, how about talking to us? I mean, I know, and now they'll know that you grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up
No,
in
Queens.
Queens. I'm sorry.
South
Okay,
Queens.
and I.
But
Oh, wait,
when we
where'd you grow
met,
up?
I was living in Brooklyn. When we met,
Yeah, but
I,
where'd you grow up in Hollis?
in Hollis, Queens. Yeah,
See, I
I was
cut through
living.
that from JFK to go to LaGuardia sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I was living in Brooklyn. My residence was in Brooklyn, but I spent a lot of time in the hotel, Manhattan
Right.
Hilton.
Yep.
But I grew up in Hollis, Queens.
Okay, so you grew up there, and you got into music early on, right?
I got into it actually professionally. I started late. I was a music lover. I
Uh-huh.
was inundated with music simply because of my family. My mom and dad. Uh, Sam Cooke was a good friend of our family.
Very cool. I remember you telling me that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Jackie Wilson, Tito Puente. So uh, something about that vibration of that business was close enough to me. But when I decided to be a music, I decided to do music. It was after I decided not to become a policeman. Well, it
Huh.
was. Well, no, I'm sorry. When I decided to be a musician. No, how should I say this? I wanted to be a musician until I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I had an epiphany that I should be a musician instead of a policeman.
That's
I
awesome.
was 14 years old when that happened.
Huh.
It was their first live arena tour. you know. But I didn't activate it until I was 18. I didn't get my first serious instrument until I was 18 years old.
And which one was that? Because you play so many.
What's that?
I said, which one was that? Because you play so many.
Oh, well, yeah, well, the bass. You know, what people know me as in my career is the bass. But my first gig, my first professional gig, was at 16, but that was on drums. You know,
Nice.
so it's kind of a
And what was that? What was that first professional gig?
It was July 4th.
Oh,
Bicentennial year, 76.
oh, very cool. Yeah.
And I sat in for Kenneth Lee. Kenneth Jennings, that's his full name. Well, not now, but for many years he was Russell Simmons' driver.
Oh my God.
He lived right across the street from me. I remember he moved down from the Bronx one summer. I didn't know him. He moved across the street from us. And our introduction was him shooting me in the head with a BB gun from across the street. Right.
God bless.
Right
That's cool, huh? Got your attention.
Sure did. And he said it was an accident.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason I tended to believe him is because he came over and he was so apologetic. He said, "Look, here, take it, shoot me, go ahead." And I didn't do it.
No.
But we became really fast friends after that. And but he had a gig. He was a drummer. He had a gig out in I think in Flushing somewhere, a house party, and I was his roadie, and he was late. And they wanted to start the party, so I ended up playing at least a quarter of the set. That was my first gig.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's kind of on from there to some degree.
That's amazing.
But yeah.
So you did that, then you took up the bass, and then how soon thereafter did you get into Public Enemy?
Well, I didn't get into Public Enemy till around the Mob Story time. You know,
Gotcha.
Public Enemy was just a three-piece entity. They had no musicians in the band. Although one of the producers was a musician, but the group didn't perform with a band until around the time we did Mob Story. You know, I already known Chuck, and we worked on a project the two together.
Yeah.
And then he asked me. He said, I'm paraphrasing. He said he wanted to take Public Enemy in a different direction or expand its live thing, whatever. And he asked me if I would be the bass player and consider being the band leader. I said, sure. And so it was on from there. It was pretty much a rough ride, though, because none of those guys wanted me in there except him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wanted me in that band. And then Flavor came around at some point. And he said, "Yeah, no, I can see. You know, yeah, it's really powerful, man." But for the most part, the rest
he's a trip, man.
Yeah, he's a trip and a half. You know, one thing I say about Flavor, man, for all the things that people say about him, that guy will literally give you the shirt off of his back.
God bless him.
You know, I've seen him do it. You know, he is. You know, I'd rather focus on what was good about people in a tough situation. And he's a guy that if the chips are down and you really need somebody to look out for something, he knows you're in trouble. He's one of these people you can depend on, in my opinion.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and Chuck is like that too.
Yeah,
Chuck
sure.
Yep. So
you and Chuck. Yeah, he's always there for you.
Yeah. And and then I moved on to Bootsy Collins. I was playing with Bootsy at the same time I was playing with Chuck. And one thing led to another. Now I'm working with Stuart Copeland and Fred Schneider, and you know, awesome. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but
no, I know. Well, we have to because you've been. Listen, at our age, we've been around, right?
Yeah.
So
wait,
hold on. Let me interrupt. Wait, one last thing. What's this movie called that your buddy did, the documentary?
Yeah, and that is called Find Your Groove.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I got involved in that through David Belafonte, Harry Belafonte's son.
Sure.
David and I developed a relationship after I interviewed Harry some years ago. And David and I developed a friendship and been friends ever since. And he contacted me one day about 4 years ago now and said, a buddy of his was working on a film, and it's about music in school systems. And he said, would you want to participate? He said, I told him I think you'd be a great interview.
Right.
And I said, sure. So they flew me out to New York. We did the interview actually in David's apartment in Manhattan, uptown. And so basically the film is about the importance of music in our society and
yes.
importance in our educational system. And what I focused on in the interview was getting people to consider why music was in our education system to begin with. If you figure out why it was ever put in, then you'll understand why it was taken out. It wasn't the best. It wasn't taken out for the best of reasons. It was put in for a good reason, but taken out for not so good reasons. But I like the fact that he's covering that, and he has some people that are critical thinkers giving their opinions about it. I saw Norman Lear. They sent me not a sizzle reel, but somewhat of a rough cut to show me, let me know who was involved. And I saw first couple of people I saw was Norman Lear, Wynton Marsalis. Can't remember who else was on the first reel.
Whoopi Goldberg is in it, right?
Yeah, but I don't think I saw her in the first one. I think I found out later. Turns out one of my favorite musicians is in it, Lenny White from Return to Forever. Lenny's one of my favorite musicians, and then he's become a friend over the years. He's a awesome friend. I found out he was in it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. So, but yeah, that's what that film is. And then this director also, he's still in the middle of producing a Prince documentary that.
And what's the director's name again? I'm sorry.
His name is Mike Kirk.
Yep. Okay.
And he asked me if I would participate in the Prince documentary. The day I shot the first thing for him, I gave him an answer. He said, "Well, Andre Simone, who was one of Prince's early musicians, he gave us a very similar answer about Earth, Wind, and Fire." He said, "Would you be interested in the Prince documentary I'm working on?" And Prince had just died at that point.
Right.
And I said, "Sure." So about a year later, to a year and a half later, he flew me out to Capitol Studios and interviewed me for that. And then ended up scoring the music for it with some friends here in Santa Fe. So we'll see how that turns out.
I heard some of it, and I think it's going to turn out pretty good, buddy. Let me tell you.
Put together a good product.
But this Find Your Groove, which is on Amazon Prime as of yesterday, I believe, that's good stuff. People got to see that. That reminded me a lot of.
I haven't seen the final cut myself. I'll check it out. Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. You look good. Nice blue chair you're sitting on. You got the leather jacket. Yeah,
that chair was awesome. That was David's.
That looked comfortable. Yeah. unlike the chair I'm sitting in now.
Well, the chair I'm sitting in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll get this together.
But I never asked you how you got involved with Aerosmith.
To millions, forces trying to corrupt that feeling. Piece of the pie, that's what they dealing. To sell your soul, you commit the treason. Gotta make ends, is that the